Hello, and welcome to Service Above Self, a production of the Broadbrook Rotary Club of Connecticut, with support from Rotary District 7890. My name is Margaret Byrne. I'm a Rotarian member of the club, and I'll be your host for this episode. Today we will explore a profession in public administration. Joining me is Joyce Stille. She is the professional administrator for the town of Bolton in Connecticut. Truly a service sector job, a town manager oversees the daily operations of a town or city government and is responsible for maintaining what so many of us see as being paid for by our taxes. Joyce, welcome.
Thank you very much for including me today.
Could you tell us a little bit about your background, what your educational and your work experience has been?
Certainly. I went to college and my majors were business administration and economics. I had a double major. And then from there, in my various jobs, I wound up in Connecticut, actually from the Midwest. I'm a transplant. And I worked at the VA Medical Center in Newington as an accounting technician. And as that progressed, I decided that I wanted to go back when I was in college and some of my other jobs. I had been outside a lot of my life and decided that I wanted to try that again. And I actually got a job with the town of Bolton as buildings and grounds supervisor in 1988. As I progressed in that position, the current town administrator at that time used me to develop policies and procedures and things such as that, created a new department for me with staffing, and when he left, he asked if I would become the interim town administrator for Bolton, which I did in 1995 and was appointed to the position. With that, I went to the University of Hartford for its Master's in Public Administration program.
Okay, that's an interesting course.
Yeah, it is. When I was in college, I worked at even a golf course and was the assistant superintendent, so I kind of had that background too. And during college, some of my other jobs, I helped my dad build the house that my parents lived in, and so very diverse background, which that jack of all trades, master of none, fits perfectly into this position.
To being a town administrator.
That's correct.
Now, working in this field, are any types of licenses required, or did you have to get a master's in public administration?
Not necessarily, but it's certainly helpful. The business administration and economics background is very crucial to having that understanding, because you're dealing with the budget and millions of dollars and how can we make this work.
Now, do you belong to any professional associations?
Yes, we have a Connecticut Town and City Managers Association, CTCMA, and then we also have an International Managers Association, which I'm a member of both of those as well.
And what do those associations help you with the town?
We have annual conferences, we have regular meetings, but what it does is just sharing that information with your fellow managers is always a key part of success in any position.
Because there's never a new problem. Someone else has dealt with it already.
I have no reason to, recreate the wheel. If it's already there, how can we make it work for Bolton? And, the training that we provide and all of those types of things, the seminars, the speakers, it's always, I learn something new each and every time.
Okay, that's great. Now, as the administrator, what is the job that you do for the town?
No 2 days are alike. And my to-do list always gets longer instead of shorter. But it's basically I'm responsible for the day-to-day operations of the town. I implement policy. I don't necessarily develop it, although I'll develop key parts of it, but it's up to the Board of Selectmen that we have to really adopt that policy. Then it's my job to carry that out, whatever it might be. But the day-to-day operations, the personnel, all of that falls back on me for that work.
And so if you're in charge of everything, that includes hiring in the departments?
Yes. I certainly depend on my department heads for a lot of that work, but it depends on the level of the position as to whether or not I'll sit in on interviews or not. I trust my department heads to the fullest extent, and I work with them. Part-time hirings, like for summer help, I may not get as intimately involved in. People for our finance department that is crucial to the town and its operations, I become a little bit more involved in that process. Hiring of a department head, then the hiring process goes out a little bit further, and I'll usually involve somebody from the Board of Selectmen in the end as well in that hiring process.
So it's not just your personal decision.
And we outreach to other towns that have similar positions or other town managers to come in and sit on some of these interview panels, depending on the level of the job as well, because that's just another step.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting, that you use other sources from other towns.
Yes, yes. And if another town needs somebody from my town to go, or my highway supervisor, library director, that's what it's all about. We have to work together. And I have no problem ever giving that staff the time to go to sit in on those interviews.
Is it mostly involving towns in your general area, or is it outside of
Sometimes
the
it's
county?
outside. It depends. I know quite a few town managers, and so some of them, they might be a ways away, but because I'm good friends with them, they might ask me for, help, or I might ask them, and that's the way we work.
That's good. Real camaraderie.
That's
You're not
that's
out
it.
there alone.
That's it. And especially in these economic times, we have been forced to, and I strive to continue to, find new and different ways to work together within our town, within our area, and within our region, within the state. I mean, there's no other place to go but to see how we can possibly combine together and work together more effectively and efficiently.
Now, New England's known for its town form, meeting form of government.
Yes.
The public takes part in the decision-making for the municipality. How does a professional manager work with an elected board of selectmen or a town council?
They are my bosses. The taxpayers are also my bosses, but, the taxpayers elect them. And so they really provide the guidance. I've been very fortunate in Bolton that we've had, just in all my years, wonderful groups of selectmen that are truly interested in the betterment of the town and have not got caught up on what political party or, anything like that. It's strictly been the betterment of the town, which makes my job much easier, much easier. The form of, the old town meeting, we still have those. And, sometimes you have better attendance than others. Before the show, we were talking about, we just had a town meeting, and we actually only had 3 people show up. Mm-hmm. Is that discouraging? To a certain degree. But yet, within that, there is that opportunity for the voice of the people. We have found that we have a lot more informational meetings. Some people might call them public hearings, but they're really not. They're informational meetings to gather input from the community on key issues before the selectmen move forward. That's a good way to guide things through, and especially if you think it's going to be controversial. We've had an issue, for example, with Bolton Lake this last year with algae and naiad weeds, and people wanted to know what we were going to do, how we were going to do it. And we had several key meetings on that. That's the outreach that you need. Working with that elected body, I feel, is seamless the majority of the time. You would not know that. And that's part of the rapport that we have developed over the course of time. In Bolton, our charter has set forward a list of things that has to go to town meeting. Most towns that still have a town meeting form of government and board of selectmen list things that don't have to go to town meeting because it's so broad as to what has to. Bolton is just reverse of that. Mm-hmm. We have a very limited number of things that have to go to town meeting. I think that's been the proper step for Bolton. They've had my position since 1973.
Really?
So they've had it for a long, long, long period of time. Yeah. Whereas, a lot of towns our size, 5,000, still don't even have this type of position.
And I'm sure some even a little bit larger than that.
Oh yes,
don't have
oh yes,
positions.
without question.
Because
So
we're also the land of steady habits. So
yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Connecticut, do the Yankees want to give up the control
Yes.
of that town meeting to run their
Yes.
government versus hiring someone to do it?
Yes, and I moved into town in the late '80s, but I'm still a newcomer. I'm not one of the old families of Bolton, and that
That can be true
that
anywhere.
won't change. Yeah.
That could be true anywhere. So if there's a change in political parties in the majority on the Board of Selectmen, does that jeopardize your job with the town?
Could it potentially? Yes. Could I have the same board and it jeopardize? Yes. If they're not happy with the way I'm doing my job, which is true of any job. It takes a solid majority, which is 4 out of the 5, to change my position, but they would have to have good reason to do that. With the last charter revision, which occurred in 2009, 2009, in that charter revision, it actually put my job and description in the charter as part of the charter. So it actually gave me a little bit more weight to my position as well.
Yeah, and a little more security,
Yes,
that you're not subject to if there's some big issue out there that suddenly comes up and people aren't up in arms about it.
yes,
It's not such a risk
yes.
to take.
And, hopefully my work and my desire to do work ensures that I'll be here tomorrow and next year and the year after that.
Because part of your job is engaging the public.
That's right. I'm dedicated to my position. And that's part of it. You don't work in public service if you're not dedicated to public service. The two just aren't going to go together.
You have to be willing to listen to other people's opinions.
That's it.
Now, how does a professional manager work with other elected officials? If there's an elected tax collector or town clerk, can that be a difficult situation?
I think the greatest challenge there is if the person coming into those positions has the necessary training and background to operate in today's world. As people have developed charters and made changes, you've seen far less of those positions be elected, and they're now just staff. They're appointed, by the Board of Selectmen, the town manager, and getting away from more and more those type of elected positions.
Again, adding more stability and continuity.
Well, unfortunately, as the world has evolved, those positions have too. And what you have to know and background and knowledge is just not something that the average Joe can run for.
Just pick up
You're
without
not going to
training.
that's right, you're not going to pick it up.
Well, Joyce, we're going to take a little break.
There you go.
We will take a short break, and when we return, Joyce will describe for us the types of jobs typically available in town or city government.
This is a tree that was never chopped down to make a crutch that was never needed by a child who never got polio because medicine was never in short supply, thanks to people whose compassion wasn't either. Over the past 20 years, Rotary Club members have helped immunize over 2 billion children against polio. Thanks to them, the world will soon be polio-free. Rotary, humanity in motion.
Here we go. What? What?
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent, because kids in foster care don't need perfection. They need you.
Welcome back. Rejoining me is Joyce Stilley, Town Administrator for Bolton, Connecticut. Now we'd like to turn our focus to the types of jobs available in town or city government and how an administrator deals with different situations. Joyce, I'm sure the size of the municipality dictates the number of its employees. However, there are various services provided in every municipality that are consistent across the board. What types of jobs are available on a full-time basis?
Well, on a full-time basis, if you go through the departments, and I'll kind of start by where they are in town and work my way around so I don't leave anybody out, but we have a buildings and grounds department. That might be part of a public works, but basically you need somebody to take care of your municipal buildings and your park grounds and your lawns, your greens, etc. You have various levels of people within that. Some may be the people that you have a supervisor, but some may be keyed more towards the building maintenance, such as custodial staff or maintenance itself. And then you have the other side of it, people geared towards that lawn, field maintenance. Highway department, every town's going to have some type of a public works. And again, it's going to be how much work do you do within your town or do you contract out? You know, can you do paving jobs yourself, or are you contracting that out and you may only do small paving jobs? Under that, sometimes you may have your department for your waste disposal. Some towns, larger towns, would certainly have a refuse department. Bolton, that's something we contract out. Finance department. Every town's going to have a finance department, and depending on how many people they have within that might depend on how many, if they have incorporated the Board of Ed in or not as to what they're trying to do within the town. Senior citizens, we have a director of senior and social services. We've combined those together, but we have a senior center. You're going to have that type of available aid to people, whether it's a small town or a much larger town. Library. Towns have libraries. Some might be independent, though, and just receive a stipend from the town and act independently. In Bolton, they're part of our town staff and a key part of our town staff. Then you move into town hall itself. You have a building and land use department. You're always going to have that in a town. That includes your development, any type of planning and development. Town clerk, we already talked about, key position in any municipality. Tax collector, another key position in any municipality. Assessor, another key position in any municipality. We have recreation. We also have, in our particular instance, is we're part of a health district, which means there are positions available within the health district itself, but that takes care of all of our sanitation needs. Could be wells, the sewer, septic. That's all done through the health district, which we belong to as well.
And does the town sometimes have part-time positions or seasonal types of positions?
We actually have quite a few part-time positions just to be able to get us through. We also have several seasonal positions. You know, in the summer we run a summer camp. We have Indian Notch Park, so we have lifeguards. We have summer staff that works to help maintain the park at that point in time. You have election workers that are part-time. We didn't talk about registrar voters, but in Bolton, those are part-time positions as well. So there's a number of opportunities available. We have at the library, right now, we actually have a need for substitutes. You know, when staffing is out, sometimes we have to bring in substitutes to help cover the library itself. We have pages, that is usually a high school student that works as a page at the library. What an excellent experience to carry them forward.
Mm-hmm. Oh, great experience. Now, do you perform background checks on all employees? Is this like a private employer?
We do a background check on every employee for the town of Bolton, and we are a resident state trooper town, so we go through the state police for that criminal background check.
Okay. Now, are there advantages or disadvantages to working for a municipality as opposed to a private sector type of job?
If you work for a municipality, the answer would be yes. If you don't, probably no. No. Certainly I feel that there are advantages. You know, we talked about public service before and the desire for public service. You usually will not find wages are as good on the public sector side as they might be in the private sector side. But you will find the benefits and the camaraderie far different on the public sector side and usually much better than the private sector side. So to me, that's the difference.
And handling emergency situations, what is your role as a public administrator?
I'm ultimately responsible. If things go well, the Board of Selectmen get the credit. If things go bad, I'm responsible,
So with
and the
these-
buck stops with me.
Horrible storms we've had.
I've spent quality time at Town Hall. We have an emergency management director that works for the town. He's also our building official and our zoning enforcement officer. But we have a core group of people that is our team, our administrative team for those types of emergencies, and it involves fire department, our resident troopers, it involves school, buildings and grounds, highways, social services. You know, it brings all those people together to talk about what are we going to do beforehand, how are we going to operate during, and then what do we need to do in the end to make things better for the next time.
So it's real committee work.
It is, and if we open our Emergency Operations Center, which is at the Town Hall, I'm basically committed to be there from the time it opens till the time it closes. I might go home for an hour or two to get a change of clothes for the next day, but I sleep there even. I'm committed to there. And usually I don't have power at home, so it's not a big, I'm not giving much up.
You don't mind.
No, but it's key that we work together to meet the needs of the town.
Now, how does municipal government share information with its citizens, and is that part of your job?
That is certainly part of my job, and it has become easier and more challenging at the same time. You know, the newspapers, unfortunately, don't put as much local news in anymore.
And
So-
are there as many printed newspapers,
Well-
or do people read them?
Yes, good questions.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people will subscribe to either one or the other that are in our area, but not both. So that's a constant battle. We used to have a community newsletter, and, you know, that ceased. The town did not produce it. It was produced outside of the town, but we submitted things. So we're relying more and more on our website, which a lot of people, especially the younger people, that's their life, is all technology. It's not, they don't read newspapers. I mean, that's just not something they read as a local newspaper. So it's been good and bad. We are actually now just in the process of the Everbridge notification system of getting that started in the town of Bolton. So when we do have an event happening in the town and we want them to know that the EOC is open, the shelter is open, or whatever, we can send out those notifications directly.
How does that go out? What form is that?
What will happen is we'll be, within the next month, sending things out to our citizens, asking them to sign up online, and we'll help them if they can't do it. But they'll get a choice of like 3 ways to receive the notice, and they can choose, you know, they want a phone call on their cell phone first, they want an email, they want a text. They tell us how they want it done. And the system goes through and it will try number 1. If it doesn't get you, it'll go to number 2. If it doesn't get you, it'll go to number 3. And if it is a dire emergency that we get a hold of folks, we can put in a way that then, if they can't get you, it'll come back and tell us.
Oh, so you'll have some
So
record.
we'll have some record. And as we talked about, you know, another means of communication that I've implemented here is I do a live show 2 times a month here, trying to get information out to the public. My last show was on the budget, and it was the chairman of the Board of Finance who was my guest. And, you know, it's a key time of year. We need to have that information out there for people.
And do you get feedback from citizens saying, hey, I saw you on television, and, you know, I like that topic you covered?
It's usually the ones that I do not expect that I hear back from. And that's great, you know, and you can stream it live through the station as well, and that's technology is the wave, and how can we possibly develop it? And I'm, you know, there's so many more opportunities out there that I know I haven't taken advantage of yet, but I will.
And are these topics that you find at your association meetings?
Oh yes, definitely. You know, as we've been talking about budget, and you know, it's hit Bolton this year that this is our tough year, and we're looking at a 5.61% tax increase at our first referendum. I cannot tell you the last time we were even thinking of something over 5%.
Wow,
But
that's significant.
to even start, that's where we were. And Bolton is over 90% residential. So there's not a lot of commercial base to help support us. And that has made life more challenging.
And you talked a little bit about how a town might outsource some services. Is it generally a budgetary issue?
Not necessarily. For towns, I think it depends on what is the best use. You know, at times you run into, does it really make sense to have a part-time person? Can you really find a qualified part-time person to do that if that's all you really need is part-time? And then if they're gone, what happens? You know, when they take their 2 weeks vacation and it's your computer technician people and you crash, what happens? So some of those things, it does become a need base. We contract out for refuse collection. We're just far too small to even try that. We contract out for resident state troopers. We have 2 resident state troopers. We contract out for our director of community development. It's a part-time position. We contract out for our engineering services. But it lets us fill the voids that we have and meet our needs. We contract with the school for our technology, and that has worked for us because we have whatever level of support we need available to us.
Great. Well, Joyce, jack of all trades, master of none.
That's it.
Thank you so much for joining us today and educating all of us about a career path in public administration and what it is like to work in the public service sector. Thanks to all of you for watching this program. We hope that it may have given you a new idea about a career path. As always, we here at Service Above Self encourage you to find a worthy cause and lend a helping hand. Until next time.